start the meeting today with a quorum. It's been a while since we've accomplished that. I'm going to try to make my president's remarks brief, but there are a few things to touch on. So you'll bear with me. First of all, snow. We've had 6 snowfalls this season, requiring that we called in the contractor for plowing and treating the roads. And from everything I can see, he's done an excellent job of maintaining our ability to get around safely. And at the same time, we worked with him, and he worked with us very closely to make sure that we minimized any extra costs while maintaining safety. So with the 6 snowfalls of varying depths of snow and some very freezing weather, we ended up just about doubling our expenditures on snowfall relative to what we budgeted. Not to worry, because we budget at the average rate of expenditure for snowfall, and that will probably even out next year, and certainly last year we didn't come anywhere near our budgeted amount for snowfall. But just so you know, we spent $60,000 on snow this year. This is a real organization. We have real expenses and real responsibilities, and that's the way it was set up within the county originally and continues. Secondly, by now you've all received your invoices, which reflect the new fee structure. I just want to note in retrospect that the board has been very diligent for the last 2 or 3 newsletters to very thoroughly cover the fact that this was coming up. We had an open forum to discuss this thoroughly at the December general meeting, and I'm happy to say that with the new fee structure, we will not be obligated for our association, that is non-STD expenses, to go into deficit again. Just to review, this community in the June general meeting approved a deficit budget for finances for non-STD expenses. Those expenses are critical to maintain the community, the boat ramp, the beach, safety, etc. And the deficit finances started to withdraw nearly $12,000 a year from our very limited savings that the association had built up. And that could only be continued for another 1.5 years. So with the new fee structure, we will not be forced to draw down our limited savings, which we do need for a rainy or snowy day from time to time. And I want to also remind you that at the next general meeting, the June general meeting, the community does vote on disposition of that income from the new fee structure. And finally, the main business today is the Meet the Candidates forum that was advertised in the last newsletter. And I'm happy to see that we have a quorum, so we can in fact do business today. Thank you. And lest I forget totally, well, I'm very pleased, and the board's very pleased to say that Mike Hart, who is running for commissioner for the Lusby, Southern Maryland, Southern Calvert seat, just wait, is visiting today. And he is a Lusby boy, born and raised, and gave me a recitation of all the places he lived in Lusby, including the Ranch Club.
I did get here when I was 8, so
Anyway.
technically they still call me a foreigner, the culvert guy.
But they're all lesbian, they're all lesbian. So he will be around afterwards for a few minutes once we're finished with our formal meeting to chat with you. So now I'd like to go on, since we can do business today, to the formal agenda, and I will entertain a motion for approval of our minutes from the last general meeting.
I will do approval minutes from the last meeting.
Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Marcia. I hope I can do that by voice vote. That doesn't require a secret ballot. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. That's approved. Now, I'm going to jump ahead and ask for the formal nominating committee report from Marcia Latham, co-chair of the nominating committee.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Morning. Madam President, I'm Marcia Lapham. I'm co-chair of the nominating committee, and we enthusiastically support our slate of candidates. We've had 4 candidates that came forth, and we have 4 openings. So the slate is number 1, Gary Heel, 2, Kurt Larson, 3, Dan Mathias, and 4 is Amy Brisbane. And we just really are happy that they came forward to help serve our community. And we will meet the candidates later. Most of you already know them, but we'll have a formal. Any questions?
I want to note that Dan, who is an auditor, is of necessity out of town for this meeting, but he is attending by phone via Peter Hall. And the rest of us are strategically situated right here. I'm now ready to accept any nominations from the floor. Okay. In that case, I'm closing the nominations, and I'm ready to, yes? I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Madam President, since we have 4 openings, 4 candidates known from the floor, I move that we accept the slate by acclamation.
Second.
Good idea.
Okay.
Discussion. As I remember our bylaws, the candidates have to agree to who would serve what term, and there has been discussion about that, and Dan has agreed to take the short term, which is a 2-year term.
Yeah, he says he's willing to take the 2-year.
Okay.
Okay. Just to remind you, we're in a system with rotating 3-year terms, and Kurt, Gary, and I are each candidates for the new full 3-year terms, and Dan has agreed to accept the 2-year term vacancy. So, according to our bylaws, it is legal to accept a motion to forego a ballot, providing the candidates agree to who will serve in each vacancy. And therefore, I need a vote on the motion to accept the candidate slate by acclaim. Everyone, any discussion, any further discussion?
Does that eliminate the need for the ballot process?
Not
Save
only
the
does
money?
it eliminate the
Yes.
need for the ballot process, but we won't have to worry about the hundreds of dollars it costs to do that, and the many, many hours of procedure that will be required by the office, to say nothing of the volunteers who are usually the board members who stuff envelopes, and the counting committee, who become very, very busy around June. So, any other points of discussion?
I have a
Okay.
question.
I move the question.
I have a question.
Yes, Dennis.
Given we're changing the fee structure and how this is going to work in the future, will this action not be valid in the future? Because we've got 35 people voting for board members, but if I understand the changes, everybody is now a voting member, not just people who are paying their association dues?
Until July 1st.
I'm saying in the future, will this then not be a valid way to go about doing this? It may not be for now, but I pose that.
I think your point is an important point to bring up, and I appreciate you raising it because I didn't mention it during my president's remarks. So I would like to hold the vote, but I think since you raised it, I better respond. So there's nothing hanging in the air for this vote, and that is everyone who is paid up with their current fees as of at least 15 days before this meeting is eligible to vote. So now I would like to ask everyone in favor of the motion. Would you please restate the motion?
Motion is to accept the 4 candidates by acclamation, ergo eliminating the need for a ballot.
Okay, all in favor?
Wasn't there an amendment to that?
No.
No.
I'm sorry.
Let's say it again. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, and we have a full board as of July 1st. And I want to heartily thank the nominating committee. I know they were working very, very hard for the last several months and building up to it several months before that, identifying and persuading candidates. And I want to note, they're very thoughtful and persuasive people. I think since we dispatched our main business so very quickly, I'd still like to open the floor for questions of the 3 candidates and the 4th by phone, because we did promise to meet the candidates' opportunity. So I'm entertaining any questions at this point. Excuse me? Yes.
I'm brand new to the community, so I don't know any of you. I mean, is it possible for each one of you just to introduce yourself? That would be
Okay,
wonderful.
that's great. All right, Gary?
Okay. My name is Gary Heel. I'm obviously a resident of Drum Point. I served 3 years as president. Some time ago, I was appointed to a vacancy here, so I'm on the board for that. And of course, now just elected for another 3-year term. I helped the community through the new STD, and I'd like to think that I brought some stability to, at least some civility to the way we run our meetings in my term.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I'm Amy Briskin. I believe I'm finishing my second term. So the first one was a few months I was appointed. The second one was I filled a one-year vacancy, and I'm just finishing 3 years. And I discovered how much work the president has to do every year this year. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that the board, despite turnover, has maintained really good continuity in identifying our fiduciary, our budgetary needs, working with the community to develop a mostly livable with STD, and finally this new fee structure, despite the many challenges for all of us, should put us on more of an even keel in the long term.
Okay, I'm Kurt Larson. My wife and I have lived in the community for 17 years. As far as background things, I was recently appointed to fill a vacancy on this board. And after arm twisting and potential rotator cuff surgery, I agreed to run. But apart from that, I can say that here in the community, I was the president of I was on the board of the Drum Point Club for 9 years, 6 years as president, 2 years as other posts. I'm a founding member of the Southern Calvary Land Trust, which preserves open space in the communities in Southern Maryland. I'm also on what's called the Commonly Owned Infrastructure Advisory Committee for the county. And let's see, what else can I say? Oh, I'm also on the Board of Governors for the Southern Maryland Higher Education Center in St. Mary's County. So I've got a lot to do, maybe after the rotator cuff surgery.
Let me mention that although he's secretary on the board, I've done the best to lighten his load there myself, so that he might not have a real taste of what lies ahead next year. And then finally, Dan.
Yeah, Dan, I'm on the nominating committee as secretary, and Dan said if he couldn't be here, he asked me to read something about him. He's been a resident owner in the Drum Point area for over 27 years. He served on the board of directors of this organization for 6 years, 2 consecutive terms, and he was treasurer for a year and a half. He's been asked to serve the Drum Point, some neighbors asked him, others, to serve the community, and he wants to run again, which he has. He works for Quality Insurance, a company monitoring, reviewing, and observing performance records for the nuclear power plants. He has a background in computers, engineering, and electronics, and operations. He feels that additional effort is needed to reach community members and involve them in creating a community atmosphere and participation in our community's affairs. Let's see what he says. Community members need to feel more like this is a community. Each person interwoven as a whole. Since I mentioned this, also community members need to be encouraged to deluge our elected county officials with messages to let the Drum Point carry on its local affairs and handle the local affairs by member-generated funds. I guess that's the message Dan wants to pursue when he becomes, in other words, more autonomy, I think, for the board representing this community. So, thank you.
Thanks. Yes.
Well, I'm Al Lavish. When I moved down here in September of 1979. But what I have to point out to you is sitting next to me is George Clemens. He, when I moved down here, was the official mayor of Drum Point Association. He's the oldest guy in the community. He's in his 90s. Great guy. But he'll tell you about the history if you're ever interested.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Hearing no further
Max
comments.
is next.
Max is next.
Introduce yourself. Tell me who you
Okay. It's time now for committee reports, and I will take the committee reports in a special order in honor of one of my colleagues, and ask for the finance committee report first.
Okay, so that is me. Okay, you have handed out to you two of our rather standard reports. Whichever one you got in front of you, have a balance sheet which shows the account balances of all of our banks, accounts receivable, so on. The liabilities, equity are all stated there. There's nothing truly important there to tell you about. We're doing well. We've got money in the bank so far. We're collecting far more dues this year. We're way ahead of schedule on collection of the new assessments this year from where we were. So we've already heard from over 550 property owners this year, and that's way ahead of schedule. Last year we only had 625 total members. So we're on a trend right now to really improve on that. So I thank you all for paying up the new dues or the assessments that you did. On the back side of that is the current profit and loss statement with our expenses for the year. Again, the past 2 or 3 years has been extremely quiet because of our restricted funding, and there's not been much going on. We're just getting through the winter months. Obviously, the snow removal is the big item on the entire budget. We did about $100,000 worth of road work last year, so that was really the only capital expenses that we had. So if there's any questions on any of that, you can always contact me. The other piece of paper there with a staple in it is just a consolidated report which shows the comparison for last year and for each one of the funding streams that we have. It's a lot more detail. Again, you will see the snow removal cost being well over $60,000, and the capital improvements actually $114,000. That had to do with the rejuvenation which we accomplished last year, and some major road repaving that we did. There's nothing else notable to report. Are there any questions from anybody now? Again, you can call me anytime, and I'll be glad to explain anything to you.
Okay, I'm now going to ask for the roads committee report, and so Gary is doing double duty today, which is typical, but go ahead, Gary.
So the roads committee had a couple of meetings actually to work on budget projections of what we think the budget might be in 2015 and 2016, and work up a recommendation which has been sent over to the planning committee for their review, and will go forward to the finance committee for their review for a final recommendation to the board of what the budget should be for next year and in years going forward. Other than that, there's been very little activity in terms of roads since December's meeting, other than the snow plowing, which we've already talked about. The big, maybe you may not understand the cost in snow removal. The real cost is not necessarily putting a plow to the road, but when we have to use salt, the cost triples. Salt is very expensive. It's expensive for the material. It's also expensive to put down. So you end up salting and then plowing And so every time you have to put salt down, the cost goes nuts. I'll give you an example. One snowstorm, we only spent $3,000, and all we had to do was plow because it was warm right afterwards and warm before, so we didn't have to put salt down. Another one, we had to salt twice, and it was the same, clear the same roads was $13,000. So you can see that you never know what it's going to be. You have to play each event as it unfolds and take appropriate action. I haven't heard any complaints from the community about snow removal. So other than the snow plow folks missed the end of a road one time and plowed in somebody's driveway once badly. I mean, everybody's driveway was plowed in, is plowed in by there's a 2-foot-high bank of snow that nobody could get through. But John?
Well, we're spending a lot of time on snow, and deservedly so. I've got some experience with that. For those of you who don't know me, I was president here for quite some time. And I dealt with contractors and snow issues. I have never seen such good service as we got this last year. It was incredible. Those roads were manicured. They weren't just plowed. They were manicured. And we put the county to shame, I'm sure. So, well done. Could you tell us who the contractor was?
Yeah, it was
Grover
Landscape
Right,
out
he's been in
of
traditional.
St. Leonard.
Right.
Yes, the guy we've had for several
He
years.
deserves an attaboy.
We will be going out for a new bid this year. We'll be taking all that into consideration. And yes, Al?
Did you have to put down sand on one occasion?
We did not. The county put down sand, but we did not. In fact, we didn't put anything down that time with sand, but the county put down sand. I wondered what they were doing actually. Lynn?
Repaving work that was done
Yes,
was never finished up with
That's
road
right.
edge.
that's correct.
And speaking of road edge, I am not proud of the community with the road edge messes we have. We have done no right-of-way clearing. There are piles of trees and weeds and so on, especially down by my neck of the woods. I would hope that we get some road edge cleaning started soon.
Let me address that. That was actually by design. As Amy mentioned, the last couple of years we've been in deficit budgeting. And one of the things we did to cut back on our expenses was we cut back on our road edge maintenance. This year we'll be able to pick back up on that again and hopefully that'll take care of it. Mr. Zoll.
Yes, I think before you do road edging and around those areas, be sure you know where the right-of-way is exactly. Because last time they cut off somebody's dogwoods and a bunch of other stuff. The surveyed right-of-way is not at all what it seems to be in many locations. And before you do any dramatic work along these edges, you've got to have a survey line.
Let me explain the problem with that. To have a survey done of all of our right-of-ways will be cost prohibitive. What we do is we assume a distance back from the asphalt, which is almost always appropriate. There are some places where our asphalt does not go down the middle of the right-of-way. Our right-of-way is always at least 40 feet wide, and sometimes it's 50 feet wide. So the asphalt, if it's in the middle, it's only 18 feet wide. You can see that there is quite a bit of space on either side of the asphalt if it's in the middle. Unfortunately, the asphalt doesn't always run in the middle, and it sometimes runs right up to the edge of the right-of-way, and the point's well taken. Maybe what we can do is make a special effort for those areas that we're aware of without having to pay for a survey. Any of you who've had surveys done for just your lot know how expensive that can be. So, a point well taken, and we'll see if we can do better on that this year. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
One point on where the new paving was done over on Bay Drive and on Lakeview, where the mail person delivers the mail, mailboxes. If you notice where the asphalt is cracking away, And I don't know what the long-term effect could be, but I think maybe we could consider doing some sort of filler to maybe try to prevent that.
And that is actually in the works. Unfortunately, the decision was made to hold off on backfilling the edges of Bay Drive where the paving was done due to weather. If you put dirt down, it would have washed away. And so we had to have warm enough weather to be able to have seed put on it and have it germinate. So that should be happening very quickly now. But I agree with you that we weren't served well by being so late in the year getting that paving done. So it's unfortunate. Any other? Yes.
I just wonder if we could get an update on the status on the entrance signs, the main drum point sign that was repaired, and then the missing Cove sign.
I did report on it at the last general meeting. I tried to keep you all up to date in the newsletter, and I probably should have mentioned it in my president's remarks, but I didn't want to appear to be taking too much time. So thank you for the question. We're doing everything we can to keep a professional appearance while maximizing our use of volunteer labor. And this has taken a little more time than we would have liked normally with the entrance sign. And we realized the insurance money, but we're still trying to get the whole thing done by volunteer labor, except for the lighting. Now, the lighting is complicated. It requires a licensed, permitted contractor, and we don't want to do that twice. So that's on hold until the weather warms up sufficiently for us to get out there and finish fixing the entrance drum point sign. And as you probably realize, the ground is mushy from the slowly melting snow, or it's been covered with snow. You don't want to be using paint outdoors when it's ultra freezing. So that's on the books, and we expect action very soon on that. Now, the Leeson's Cove sign is currently in Hilltop Signs being fully refurbished. This is an old Leeson's Cove sign that we managed to keep after vandals removed the more recent one. And we expect the refurbishing to be finished any day now. But again, since nobody wants to be digging post holes in mushy or snowy terrain, it simply doesn't work. But if we don't have any more snow, and if we continue with more normal weather, that should be replaced very soon.
Thank you.
Does that take care of it? Thanks. Any more road comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity for a lot of people don't realize that when you're a board of directors, it's not just going to meetings. Larry went out and fixed that sign, the main drum point sign, right after it was knocked over. And Gary is called at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning every time it snows and has to make decisions. I mean, I just wanted to point these things, not to mention all the other members of the directors, but those, you know, it takes a lot above and beyond just sitting on a committee to be a director. And thank you very much.
One other comment of thanks, and that's to our manager, Ms. Webster, who sends me frantic emails in the middle of the night. Wes Grover was just on the phone, or maybe it's 10 at night, and he's ready to go anytime and start salting the roads, at which point Gary was in Florida for a good deal of the winter. I, for medical reasons, had to go to Texas in December, but we get 3 or 4-way phone trees going between Grover Lawnscape, Ms. Webster, our manager, at home at all hours, Gary and myself.
And Peter.
And at some point,
Peter and Susan Hall.
Peter goes out and patrols the roads to make sure that in fact things have been done properly.
It takes a village.
And by the way, I hope as spring comes, more of you will start thinking about volunteering to help out in the community. Right now, I'm beginning to think that the job description of the board members is volunteered. So anyway, we have a wonderful board, but we would like to share the wealth. So any other comments on roads before we go to another committee?
I just have a small comment about people going outside, or excuse me, doing the repairs outside of the right of way. Flagging tape is very, very expensive. You can find it in any hardware store. And then, you know, I assume that through such things, we know when things are going to happen. And a suggestion that you tile with the flag tape at the end of your property, you have good liability stuff.
Thank you. Good point.
That's a great idea.
If you have a sensitive property.
Yeah, let me restate the, what Peg was saying was, if you think your property line, and most of you probably know where you're right, I know where my property line is, it's very close to the road actually. If you don't want us to, our pruners to come around and whack up your plants, put some tape out to mark where the property line is, and we'll honor it. It's a good idea.
Let me also note that we're typically in contact with adjacent homeowners when we have to do road work, especially if we anticipate that it might necessitate, we might have to do something close to their property line. And in fact, I'll tell you, very often the first way we find out about a road problem is from the property owner. And they want us to do the road work even if it's right on their property. So, it's a two-way street there.
It is it's in our policies and procedures to notify all adjacent property owners when we're doing anything. So before we go out and start pruning the right-of-ways or clearing the right-of-ways, we would put that in a newsletter. You would know about it, so you know we're coming. So mark your property if you don't want it messed with.
Madam President?
Yes.
May I bring up an idea? I live on Cole Drive, and one of my neighbors was washing his car in the driveway, and I happened to be going towards my home. And all of a sudden, this car comes speeding down, and I really think that we might need to consider a speed bump in front of that person's house, because it's very dangerous for kids. We've had people across the street moved in with young kids. I asked for and Maria was good enough to get signs to say watch for children. Nobody's paying attention to it, so I think a speed bump of some sort.
Brad, thank you for raising that. I do want to note that the question of speed control is discussed periodically in response to neighbors. Is that another Zumba group next to us? I hate to have. Does anybody feel brave enough to go and ask them to lower their volume a little bit?
No, it's a bunch of kids banging on drums.
Oh, it's drums?
Yeah. I just went over and checked it, yes.
There's nobody in charge.
Just note that some of us, including me, are a little hard of hearing, and if this zeroes it out. Let me just finish my point, Tom. The board has consistently voted on several occasions in response to questions about children to look into other means of speed control than speed bumps. and we can consider it. John?
Just two observations on speed bumps. I've been raising this issue for pretty close to 20 years. I lost a dog on Beretta, and I lived on Beretta Road. That's a county road, Beretta. We can approach the county to have speed bumps put in there. We don't have to deal with the board. That's entirely mine. Dogwood is also county, and there's a lot of fast traffic on Dogwood. The guy that hit my dog, I saw it happen. He was going so fast it took him 4 houses to stop. And he was an adult, he was not a kid. So that is a serious problem. And I'll be an ally.
All right, let me just note before I turn this back over to Gary to take the next question, that our board meetings are open to the community. Community members as well as board members can identify issues to be placed on the agenda when something like speed bumps is going to be, or other methods of speed control, or other topics of direct impact are to be discussed. They will be identified explicitly in the agenda, which is always posted ahead of time on our website. So that's something, you know, if we're not going to pull the wool over your eyes if we do get into this type of thing.
Holy cow. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I happen to be Brad's neighbor on Cove Drive that was out there washing my car that day, and I can tell you that at least twice in the past while standing on my own grass, I've almost been hit by a car speeding around another car on Cove Drive. It got to the point where I had to put reflectors out along the edge of my property to keep cars from driving up on the grass because they're not willing to slow down to go around a car coming the other way. I don't know how people from where Coran is to Rousey Hall Road get going that fast, but they're going fast. So, I mean, I would love to see a speed bump there, especially at the bottom of that hill there to slow people down. I'd be willing to contribute to the cost of placing it there. But it's dangerous for me to cut my grass.
Basically, slows them down and from here.
Okay, the first line of defense for people that are breaking the law is to turn them in. So I would suggest to you, when you see that, write down the tag number, call the county police.
I was trying not to have a heart attack both times.
I understand. But, you know, the law can't be enforced if nobody makes a complaint. So when you see something that's going on that's not right, in fact, I was told just last week about someone taking note that tags were being swapped on cars in your neighborhood and people driving around illegally on those tags. Different cars, same tag. And that was turned in. So I would just, and action was taken. I know firsthand that was taken. So I would say if you see something that you think is not right, call the sheriff's department. Not 911.
Right.
The sheriff's department. 28.
Right, but that really wouldn't solve the issue. That's not going to slow it.
No, but you know, it would bring a policeman out to the area.
He lives there.
Any other questions? Okay, that's the room.
Okay, to give Gary's voice a rest, I'm going to briefly call on myself and the environmental committee. Things were very quiet this winter, but I want to note a few things. Number one, the salt that's used on the road is mostly calcium chloride. It's not ordinary table salt, which is sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is bad for equipment, it's bad for your garden, it's just environmentally a no-no. It is much cheaper than calcium chloride. Calcium chloride is environmentally friendly and it works to keep freezing from happening down to a lower temperature. So it's better. So I just want you to know why we're choosing such expensive salt, and that is the way to go. Secondly, we've announced this before, but if you are in the critical area or have a septic field in the buffer, you should consider having your septic tank changed over to a low nitrogen system. There are grants available from the state administered through the county, through the Department of Health and Planning and Building. And we can help you contact those people. It's Steve Cullen in Planning and Building. I had it done at my house during a year when we didn't have as high a quota. The state was not as generous in making those grants available to Calvert County a few years ago. But my property qualified because we had one of the last metal septic tanks ever installed, and that is given high priority. Most of you don't have metal septic tanks, but there probably is enough money on this rolling grant system. And so the whole thing cost me something like $150 for permits, health department permits, and I now have a new $14,000 system at my house. And other board members have had similar, very positive experiences. It was done very, very professionally. So it's good for you, it's good for the bay. So that's one thing. And then Potomac River Appreciation Days is coming up in April. You may want to turn out. There are refreshments, there are booths, and it helps you be more conscious of things. So that's it, but now the spring is here, we'll probably be more active. Yes, John?
I've heard a lot of stories going around, and the county is now approving more and more of the mound systems for septic tanks. You know, for people whose septic tank crashes and burns, I can understand it. What I'm questioning is, does the board have a position on these lots that are presently, quote, unbuildable because they won't perk? Will they be acceptable for a mound system, and what effect is it going to have on us for the roads committee, every other thing?
We have not discussed it explicitly at the board level. We've discussed it in committee from time to time. When it was first brought up for discussion, the mound systems were very, very expensive. They may still be, but we weren't seeing a lot of approvals. I think this is a timely topic for us to consider. Be advised that this means that we could have more neighbors and higher density at Drum Point. I'm not sure. Susan?
No, we don't want that.
Yeah. Well, it could be that we have to figure out some strategy. I wish we had enough money to start buying up marginal lots, but as you know, we have barely enough money to keep going year to year. But certainly any conservation activities are welcome. Yes, Max?
Yeah, matters concerning the health or sanitation septic system are all controlled by the state, so this board would not really have anything other than comment influence, I think, on anything having to do with this. So if the state wants to go ahead and approve those mound systems on these lots, there's very little that we can't deny it or anything like that. So realize that, you know, we're limited to comments just like all the other residents in the community, and it would be up to a large voice to try and sway the county or the state about installing such kinds of systems.
I think that underscores the point that maybe the board might want to think about a long-term strategy for the community as a whole. Not, you know, that might help us conserve more spaces. Okay. I'm now ready to call on Gary again for the planning committee report.
I had no report because the planning committee hasn't met since the last general meeting, so I have nothing to report. There is a meeting coming up. There's a meeting coming up next week, so that's it.
Okay, I'm now ready to open the floor for old business. We have none scheduled, unless you want to raise it, Peter.
I'd just like to say that the beach security group has met again. We've submitted a detailed budget for video surveillance and signage to the planning committee. The planning committee has it on hand, and as soon as the board of director releases our budget for that, it'll be about $1,000 some dollars, $1,200, something like that, to put up video surveillance of the type, if you're a hunter, you know what they look like, in some areas, discrete areas around the beach. Amy and I, on the 1st of April, will be meeting with the Drum Point Club to discuss the shared interest in trying to resolve some of the security of the beaches, since we're heading into the summer season. Some people like to keep that beach very quiet and discreet and solitary and nice. Others, the club is interested in having more activities to draw more people down to the beach. It's a wonderful place for all of us, and they're a group, about 10 or 15% of the community, use it quite extensively. So I think it's an important part, and I look forward to the board going ahead and releasing the funds so we can go ahead and hope to mitigate some of the problems there.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
John?
Yes, minutes for December 7th that we previously approved. At the bottom is a reference to a motion that was made and tabled that still belongs to the club. We have to act on that even though the higher than So it is old business. The motion to table was made by Dan Mathias. What page is it? The second page of the bottom of the December 7 minutes that we just approved. Look down at the bottom.
Point of order, Madam President.
Yes.
That is not old business, that a table motion becomes active again upon a motion to remove from the table.
I beg to differ. When you table a motion, it's a motion that's there to allow the committee to think about it, come back, and it can't be just disappear.
Table motion parliamentarily has to be removed from the table for discussion.
Next time.
Is that a motion?
What?
Do I hear a motion to remove from the table?
I'm asking to have it dealt with. It belongs to the board until it's dealt with. According to Robert's rules.
I do not hear a motion to move from the table, so I have to move on. Unless that's what.
Without a motion to move from the tabling, we should move on. The only way a motion can be untabled is if there's significant new information that warrants further discussion.
I would like clarification how something like this can be handled, because it is a recommendation that was motion that was seconded, tabled. But it is talking about amending the bylaws. Can this group do that? If not, or I would like clarification at some point, should that not be a board function to bring back to this group? They have to approve it, or can this group make a change to the bylaws?
It is prudent for the board to sift through with its bylaws and other committees any such background information that might be needed to reinstate the tabled motion. I'm not a sufficient parliamentarian to say we could throw this open for discussion right now without the extra work being done. but you have not identified, sir, any additional winnowing of information or anything else for us to adequately consider this.
All we have to do is vote on this table motions, A or nay, and dispose of it. We don't have to discuss it any further. It was just tabled so that people could have time to think about it. That's the purpose behind it. It's not designed, tabling is not designed to dispose of a motion by itself. It requires further action. And that is owned, that motion, table motion, is owned by the organization. We've got to do something.
Madam President, I am parliamentarian for another, and my understanding, like I was just looking at that part of Robert's rules on motions to table, and as I recall, and if you want me to try to go get on the Robert's rules, I have to read and get it. But my understanding is when a motion is made and it is not dealt with immediately and somebody raises a motion to table it, it is tabled only for that particular session. At the very next session, it must be taken up and disposed of. And that's my understanding of Robert's rules. So I think John is correct that it should be addressed. The original motion should be addressed. It should be taken off the table and disposed of one way or another. That's my understanding of tabling.
My understanding of parliamentary procedure is that the scenario you described holds true only if the original motion to table specifies that at the next duly called meeting of that body, it will be revived. This has not been done.
I don't know, it just says that the motion is seconded and approved, table.
Madam President.
Yes.
I think this may be a moot point. It appears to me from reading the notes here that this is action from the nominating committee. If the nominating committee is not prepared to bring this forward, which clearly they weren't, or they would have already, I'm not sure that there's an actionable item.
Well, the nominating committee apparently made a motion and that to make a change. And that motion was not dealt with. That motion was tabled. And as I understand Robert's rules it is tabled and that ends it for that particular session and it's supposed to be brought up and dealt with the next session.
It appears we have a conflict of interest on what's correct parliamentary.
May I, rather than argue Robert's rules, would it be okay, John, and those bringing this to the table, that we make it an item at the next board meeting to discuss and make a recommendation back to this group? And rather than just argue Robert's rules, we will bring it up and deal with it at the next board meeting and then bring it back to the group.
And I think that's the proper way of doing it.
I spent 25 years in the labor movement and zoning offices, and I used to chair a lot of meetings. And in those, I know Robert's rules.
I will entertain a motion
And
from
what
the
I'm saying to
floor.
you, we have to dispose of it.
I will, is that a motion that you just made, John?
I will make a motion to the effect that this be brought up at the next meeting.
General meeting.
And resolve, A or nay. We just have to clear it.
Second.
Yes.
All right, all in favor of bringing this motion to the floor at the next general meeting?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. How many nays? 3. Okay, it looks like the bylaws committee will have to get very, very active in the next few months.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Okay, any other old business? to discuss.
This is a nice facility, it's cost effective, but the last two meetings we've had here on Saturdays have been extremely noisy and disruptive to the meeting. Is there any possibility of looking for another venue or another time, drum play club or something else that's also cost effective, that would be a better environment for these meetings?
Okay, I can respond to that. At the beginning of my 3-year term, which I'm just finishing, the board systematically went through an enormous amount of belt tightening in order to keep the organization going until we could get on our feet financially by some other structural means than what was available then. And at that point, the decision was made, for example, to cut back on proactive bush hogging and tree clearance. One of the things that went was this. And that's the way it goes. This is something that we could reconsider. I also want to invite you the next time we are sending the newsletter out that you join our envelope stuffing parties because the board and board members' spouses are usually the people who spend untold hours to mail out.
I'm sorry, but you're not answering my question.
Correct.
The next two general meetings have been scheduled at the Drum Point Club.
But they are
So
Wednesday evening meetings.
They're in the winter, or in the summer, they're Wednesdays.
We tried to do the Saturday meetings there as well, but Frank, correct me, we could, your calendar couldn't accommodate our calendar. That's why we ended up staying here for the Saturday morning meetings.
The Drum Point Club cannot give us weekend mornings. And we tried to have a mix of weekend mornings and weekday evenings of our meetings. So the June meeting will be in the club for a weekday evening. And hopefully the planning committee can take your comment under advisement. But I do want to remind you that this community facility, as noisy as it often is,
No, I
is
preface
free.
my
But
question with the
we
fact
are
that
going
it
to
is,
continue
I
to
recognize
have
it's
some
cost
weekends.
effective, but it's very disruptive to the people trying to listen to the speakers. They have to put up with drummers and jumbo dancers and everything else. So all I'm asking you to do is consider both sides of this.
Yes.
And see if there's another alternative.
We will consider it. There are also some other fixes we can do. But again, because we do need the weekend mornings to be available for certain people, it's possible that we can work with the community center on the choice of rooms and make sure that when they give us a room, it's not going to be adjacent to a Zumba class. Yes.
I would have just been helpful if you had microphones. I mean, it's as simple as just having a microphone, and I would have been fine. So, and also just the way the seats are arranged. That's all.
That's another fix we could work on.
Because if somebody has that.
Right. If
that would work.
we're in the auditorium, I know they have public address facilities. I'm not sure about this.
And then we can just set up the chairs or something.
Any other comments on this? But your point is well taken. But again, we do need to keep weekend mornings available in alternation. The old library that was in this building, is it being used for anything right now? I don't know. I noticed there are offices there. The what?
They're moving more of the Parks and Rec into that area.
All right, we will look into this carefully and see what we can do. I mean, I do want to point out that it's only this meeting and the previous general meeting held held in the community center when we had a noise issue. And we thought the last one was kind of singular, so we didn't look into other fixes when we were in the community center. But is your concern mostly the noise and not the fact that this is yet another morning weekend?
Mostly the noise.
Okay. Now we can work on
I just
that.
mentioned the meeting time, if there's a way to adjust the time to avoid the classes, that's one possibility. Another possibility is a different venue, another possibility is a different day, another possibility is a different room.
Or somebody who might have a large rec room at home. And no teenage children.
Yeah.
Okay, but we will seriously take this into consideration. Any other new business or comments?
Public comment?
Yes.
I just realized that at the last board meeting, I wanted to thank Len Addis and John McCall because they both left the board and have both devoted so much time to the board over the years. Thank you.
I also want to, as president of the board, thank both Len and John for showing up not only at this community general meeting, but at many of our interim board meetings, bringing the benefit of their experience and wisdom. So they're still in there with us. So, yes, John.
Madam Chair, some 2 months ago, I think, or a month ago, someone approached me and told me they were going to build a transmitter tower at the junction in Crosby Hall Road and Loretta. Is there anything to that?
Yeah, I can speak to it. It's going to be a cell phone tower. There's no radiation. The tower, in fact, we're going to have a meeting this coming week. And it should be good for the community because I know that even Rhea says that when she wants to use her cell phone, she has to go out of the house, sometimes to the office. And I know that happens throughout the community. So it's a service to the community, and I think it'll be great. It's right in, as you turn into Drum Point onto Loretta, it would be on the left-hand side of the road.
Is there any way it could be decorated so it's, anyway it can be made attractive?
Yes, they're going to do some plantings and things like that to make it look okay.
How far back from the road?
Paul, wait a minute. I called on Len.
I'd like to understand what is the approval process that takes place? Is the Drum Point Property Owners Association make any input? Do we as individuals have an opportunity to make input? What is the process?
Okay, John Gray has looked into it, and there will be a hearing.
Yeah, there's a hearing on the 13th of April. And if it's the third?
Third.
This coming
By the way,
Wednesday.
the notice for this is barely readable. You have to get out of your car, walk up and read the sign. But I'm very concerned that we are putting in a mini industrial area right across from my entranceway. And if they can hide an 80-foot square cyclone fence that's going to surround this, I doubt very much that that's going to be feasible. If we're willing to extend, my cell phone works perfect all the time. I'm not sure how you can be sure that this new cell tower is going to service your service. But in any case, I seriously think we need to know more about where this is going to go, what kind of plannings are going to be, and get some sort of a drawing system. Maybe it'll be at this hearing. But I don't think we want to damage the impression that we try to give in our entrance.
Max?
John, after LNG
Wait.
steel mills next.
Please. All right, Max?
Yeah, the plots are all available for this thing, and I can't really recall where I got it at, but you can get them online and print it out. The plot is at the far end of that lot, near the circle, where the road bends it, right there near the what's the name of it, Front Range, the road that's in the ranch club there with the gate. It's very close back to that end. It is not at the corner of Ralphie Hall. And it is at least 100 feet back in the woods. There will be a driveway which is approximately across from there's a house that's there just before the curve on Morita. The driveway to the tower is approximately close to that driveway, but on the opposite side of the road. Goes back into the woods. It is, I don't remember the exact dimension, an 80 foot on a side fence. So it is a very large area of the land. It is a private lot, belongs to the ranch or to the Drum Point Club. Does not belong to Drum Point or the association. We, just like you, would be members of the community who might have a comment at the public hearing, which is an appeal hearing coming up on the 3rd of April. The announcement is posted there at the corner of Ralphie, but that is not the location of the facility.
Where did you find this?
I don't remember. It came around and I just saw it. I went online and I got plots and the application and everything for it.
Go to land records.
Land records.
I'm going to suggest, Rita, that if you haven't already done so, post a link to the announcement Monday of the public hearing, which is Wednesday. Give as much information as you can, and since it is a public hearing, anyone can turn out.
I'll put it on the website.
I think if you go to the planning and building appeals hearings, it'll come up there.
I have a copy right here if anybody wants to see it, say after the
Well, she
meeting.
can scan that to us because it changes the whole impression. If it's going to be that far back, it's not going to impact our interest way at all. It's going to be back far and worse. But the place where they have the sign posted is terribly misleading.
I didn't put
Correct.
that sign up.
I know you did.
It's just where the sign is highly visible, you know, back in the woods.
Well, you can't read the sign anyway.
I believe the original tower was like 190 feet or something, but the reason for the appeal hearing, again, on April the 3rd, is because they're looking for a lower tower. That's why they're having a second appeal on it. It's already been passed, but they're having a second appeal on the height of the tower. Let me also say that your telephone reception is going to get dependent on which service you have.
Sure.
There's only one contractor, Verizon, who's putting a transponder up on the tower. So until other providers also put a transponder on the tower, if you have AT&T or anybody else, you're not necessarily going to approve yours. There probably will be a police transponder placed on the tower also, which will greatly facilitate the police cruisers in the area. But right now, there's only one, and that's Verizon going up there. There, yeah.
It's very helpful. That's very helpful.
Well, Logan, different subject. I have a question on the covenant fee and the assessment fees. We've had a problem in the past with collecting covenant fees in the community and dues as well. I'd like to know what plans and procedures the board is planning to use for people who do not pay the assessment fee and the new covenant fee.
We'll be filing claims for those people. I've been filing claims for past due covenant fees right along, but at $10 a year, it takes a while to add up to enough to bother doing that.
Yeah.
Barring some of those old that are CRE holdovers from a long time ago. But this will add up rather quickly. So I will be filing claims. That's probably one of my main duties in the next year.
Okay.
I mean, you know, as it approves.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, John.
Once more, with these covenants and fees, how do they relate to the Chesapeake Land Trust? Properties that are owned and not going to be built upon by Chesapeake Land Trust, I think is one of them, and then Drum Point has its own properties. How do we address the fees on those?
That is still under discussion.
I knew I'd get something.
Now, wait a minute, are you talking about privately owned properties that are not going to be built on, or conserved
I'm not sure. Let's deal with both.
All right. I have planned to have Gary, who has been shepherding this topic since before the current fiscal year, address this question. I just want to note, if you have been reading your recent newsletters, they are very explicit about the fees for privately owned, non-conserved properties. They get a lower fee based on equitable contribution of everyone and lower expectation of property owners of undeveloped land for use of the roads and the other facilities. Gary?
So, to be direct and answer your question, John, right now there is no consideration for conserved properties or any other properties. The bottom line is, if the property has covenants on it, they are assessed at undeveloped lot is $20, a developed lot, meaning a building on it, at $55. However, the board has been open to discussing some special rate structure for SCLT and the club, and those discussions will be forthcoming.
I guess part of what goes in the back of my mind is an issue I raised some years ago, that at one point, Property Owners Association was voting the properties in meetings that they had. Yes, they did.
Maybe they did, but
But
they haven't
they
in the
did.
last 5 years.
Nevertheless, they did. I objected strongly to it. I've heard nothing to the contrary. And if this results in these land trusts being forfeited to the Property Owners Association, thus giving the Property Owners Association more treasury stock to vote, that would offend me a lot.
Point of
John,
order.
okay, point of order.
Yeah. Mr. Zaleski, you are partially correct. We do vote the lots that the Drum Point Property Owners Association owns on covenant issues. However, because of the way the bylaws were or covenants were originally written, if we did not vote, we would still be voting, only it would be guaranteed as a no vote, since non-returned ballots are considered no votes. So in this case, from your point of view, we are damned if we do and damned if we don't.
I'm happy with that.
Well, I'm not. I say it's, we have an obligation. And we can't just ignore it. Again, we tried to change the covenant several times, and several people that I recognize, I know, have voted against it. So, hey.
Okay,
This is what
we're
you're
spinning off a little bit.
But you
on what the
understand my
question was.
concern.
I do, and it is, right now, there is no accommodations for any special lots that may be conserved or anything else. But it's being considered, and that answers the question. Back to you, Madam President.
Any other comments or questions before we adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
There you go.
I second. Okay,